Please join me in giving a warm welcome to the CEO of Tomorrow Today Global, Graeme Codrington.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. My job is to think about the future. I work with companies all over the world, helping them to think about the future. Not 175 years into the future, just the next 10 or 15, helping them to understand how the forces of change are going to impact their industries, their businesses, and their functions. As we look at the 2020s, what faces us is a decade of unprecedented change. We're going to see more change in the next 10 years than we've seen in the last 100 combined. In fact, a few years ago, I was listening to a presentation here at the London School of Economics by Bill Gates, and he in fact made this point. He was asked, what are you expecting in the 2020s? And his answer was really, really interesting. He said over the last 40 years, 50 years or so, we've created building blocks of change. In every aspect of life, we've built computers that were initially in our basements, then on our desktops, then on our laps, now in the palms of our hands. We've connected everything and everybody to the internet, and we're increasing the speed of those connections and engagements. And in industry after industry, from engineering to medicine, we are creating building blocks. But what's going to happen next, and this is the exciting part of the 2020s, is those building blocks are going to combine together to create systems change. We're going to see the systems of the world changing. A really good example of this is driverless cars. Driverless cars bring together 5 or 6 really, really great technologies, from artificial intelligence to radar, from the Internet of Things through to intelligent machines. And driverless cars are going to change the world. Cars changed the world 100 years ago. When they became accessible to all of us. They allowed us to change the shape of our cities and build suburbs. They spread tarmac across the planet, changing the way that we lived. Driverless cars are going to do that again, because it isn't just the old car, but now you don't have to drive it. Driverless cars allow us to change our lives. We don't have to take kids to school anymore. We don't have to drive down to the mall for shopping. We can just send the car to go and fetch it for us. It changes the way we live. It changes where we live. It changes how we live. So I think Bill Gates got it spot on, that this decade that lies ahead is a decade of systems change. And we're going to see that impact every single part of the world, every industry, and every country in the world. A lot of people are using the label the Fourth Industrial Revolution to talk about this. It's a bit of a cliche, and if you go to conferences these days, in every industry, you're going to have at least one speaker talking about the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The problem with the label is this. If you don't know what the first, second, and third industrial revolutions were, well, then the fourth makes no sense, does it? It's just a number. Why is it the fourth industrial revolution? So I thought for us this morning, although it is my job to look at the future, we are celebrating 175 years of history. Maybe let's start with a little bit of history to get our minds around this label of the fourth industrial revolution. I promise a little history lesson is going to be really valuable here this morning. So, the first industrial revolution began in 1712 when an Englishman called Thomas Newcomen invented a steam-driven pump. It was used in the Welsh coal mines to bring water out of the mines. It allowed those miners to dig deeper, to dig faster, to get more coal out of those mines, more coal per person per day. And within a few years and a few decades, every other industry on the planet had worked out that these machines could enhance the productivity and efficiency of what they were doing. From the printing press, printing books and newspapers, to making clothes. Every industry was impacted. Of course, a century later, in the middle of the 1800s, when we had industrialized every industry, we realized that just speeding up things, making things cheaper, better, and faster, but with no consideration to the humans in the system, no consideration for the planet and the impact on the planet, well, we had created a bit of a mess. That's why these pumps and machines and engines and from steam moved to oil, petrol, diesel, internal combustion, reached a problem. People were being hurt by the system. And that's why 175 years ago, there was a need for an organization to engage with young people. As it happened back then, mainly young men doing the working in those factories. But of course, we know why we're here 175 years later. There was a problem that needed to be fixed, and the YMCA was part of that solution. Remember that thought, because I think we need the YMCA now, again, for similar reasons. I'll come back to that towards the end of my talk. Anyway, 1844 moved on. We're going into the second half of the 1800s. And now suddenly people realize there isn't any more productivity to be gained. There isn't any more efficiency to be gained. The machines are doing everything that the machines can do. And so begins the second industrial revolution. The second industrial revolution didn't really invent any new technologies. What it did was it took all of those technologies that had been invented in the first industrial revolution, and it used those technologies to fundamentally change the world of work, the way that we worked, the way that we lived. Your best example is Henry Ford's motor factory. See, Henry Ford didn't invent the car. He didn't invent any of the components on the car. But what he did do was invent a new way to build cars. The continuous production line. By the time he had perfected it in the 1920s, they were able to produce one Model T Ford every 32 seconds. That was in 1922. As they came off of that production line, he realized that he had changed the way that production would work forever. He also did other things. For example, did you know that Henry Ford doubled the wages of all of the factory workers? He wanted them to be able to afford to buy the cars that they were making. And when he did the calculation, he realized that they needed to have double the salary or the wages that they had, so he did that. He just doubled them. You're going to need to remember this next sentence. So concentrate now. If you're looking down at your phones, look up at me. You need this next sentence in a few moments. The second industrial revolution did not invent any new technologies. It took the technologies that existed and used them to completely reimagine the way that the world worked, the way that work worked. Got it? So now we can go to the third industrial revolution. Beginning in the 1950s and 60s, we've got computers, the digital age. We know this revolution, from computers to the internet and everything in between. So now we get to the fourth industrial revolution. I wonder what you think the fourth industrial revolution is. In fact, we're too big an audience for you to shout out, so why don't you just turn to the person next to you and say, what do you think the fourth industrial revolution is? So when I'm speaking to a smaller audience and we get a chance to shout out, people will shout out things like robotics, artificial intelligence, automation. Maybe that's something that you said. But you get the prize this morning if you said the following. The fourth industrial revolution does not invent any new technologies. It takes the technologies that already exist and invites us to completely reimagine the world. I told you you'd need the sentence. I even gave you the words. So if the person next to you said that, you can give them a high five, tell them they won the prize this morning. There we go. There's a few of you following me this morning. Congratulations. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So in most of the countries represented here in the room today, we don't actually have a health care system. We have a sick care system. You only go to the doctor when you're sick, right? And the doctor might have all sorts of specialized equipment, all sorts of technologies from the third industrial revolution to check you out. But the doctor is essentially doing the same job that doctors were doing 100 years ago, just with slightly better equipment and slightly improved medication. Wouldn't it be better if your doctor could take all of the medical data that exists around you? So many of you have got a fitness tracker. How many of you wear a fitness tracker on a fairly regular basis? Whatever the device. So we're measuring steps, we're measuring heart rate. Some of you have got the advanced ones. They measure temperature and blood pressure and sleep and all sorts of information. So let's say your doctor had access to all that information. Then your doctor, who lives in your neighborhood, gets all of the information from all of the schools in your area. You will know that primary schools in particular are a hotbed of disease. If one kid gets sick, then everybody else gets sick, and primary school teachers need to be researched by the medical world. I don't know how they stay healthy through the year. They must have the systems of like complete concrete to deal with what comes through. But the doctors should be plugged into what's going on. If there's a bout of flu coming through the neighborhood, your doctor should anticipate that. And instead of waiting until you're sick before you go to the doctor should contact you 2 or 3 days before you even have any symptoms and say, "Hey, Graeme, I think you might get flu by Thursday. Look after yourself. Here's some medication just to kind of ward off." It's not difficult to imagine that in the future your doctor will be a lot more proactive. Wouldn't it be awesome if we only paid our doctors when we were well? That would give them the right incentive. I can easily picture this in the future. Can you? That's the fourth industrial revolution. It's not inventing new technologies, but it's using the technologies we've got to fundamentally flip things on their heads. And we can do this with any industry. From education to engineering. So automation is going to be a big feature of the 2020s, because actually it's not going to be your doctor that sends you that note to say you're going to get sick in 3 days' time. It will be the doctor's computer, right? And there are going to be a lot of jobs and a lot of industries that are going to be impacted by this kind of smart system. The good news for you here is that none of you are going to be impacted by that. The types of jobs that you guys are after, the young people of today are thinking about the future, thinking differently. You're not going to be replaced by machines. I mean, most of us in this room are not going to be replaced. I'm not going to be replaced by a machine. I mean, how do we replace live acts, live music, live talking? It's impossible to replace somebody.
Excuse me, Graeme. You're speaking nonsense.
Somebody heckling me out there. What?
Why are you looking out into the audience? I'm over here. Yes, here. Hello. Yes, hello.
Who are you?
Well, who do you think it is? It's me. Well, you. I suppose it's us. Anyway, it's me in the future. I'm here from the year 2125. Yeah, I know I'm on a little bit of a dodgy line. Or I think the dodgy's on your side. I'm on 11G over this side.
How is this even possible?
Well, I can't explain any of that because the rules of time travel mean if we give you any specifics about the future, apparently the whole space-time continuum is messed up. Okay, but what I can say is that from the year 2125, you're speaking nonsense. And that's what I need to help this audience to understand. I know why you're trying to tell them that everything's going to be fine and that they're not going to lose their jobs and that automation isn't going to affect them. I know you're just trying to give them a little bit of comfort, but you're absolutely wrong. And I needed to make sure that they understood that.
Just hang on a minute here, hang on. I'm the one in charge here.
Rather let me explain. I'm the one from the future, so I'm the one who's seen all of this stuff. So let me take it from now. Is that okay?
Okay, looks like I'm being replaced. Go for it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So let me explain what happened over the last century between where you are and where I am. It really comes down to three things that really changed the world completely and allowed for the automation of pretty much every single job on the planet. It starts with quantum computing. I mean, you guys think you've got really smart computers and supercomputers and those wonderful smartphones you still use. Well, when quantum computing hit towards the end of the late 2020s, good grief, it changed everything. You cannot believe what happens when computers just ratchet up that thinking power and the insights that they came up with. I mean, they even went back to all of our old science experiments and all of our old textbooks, and they began to find things that we had missed. It was unbelievable, the growth in knowledge. The second thing that happens is the Internet of Things. I think that's what you call it back then now. It's when we connect every single thing to the Internet and create these network effects. I mean, the best example I can give you is of driverless cars. I mean, I think driverless cars are pretty much, yeah, that's right.
Yep,
They're nearly there for you now. And you know, of course, that they're coming. But here in 2125, driverless and flying cars, and we don't even call them cars anymore, but these transportation pods that we use are all compulsory driverless. Nobody is allowed to drive anymore. You see, you get a network effect when every single car is driverless. The cars can speak to each other. They come up with the best traffic pattern. In fact, there is no traffic anymore. It's completely efficient in the transport systems. We can drive faster. We can drive further. And of course, there are no accidents because all the cars speak to each other. So that's the network effect that happens when we connect everything to the internet. And the third major revolution was machine learning. When those first two things of quantum computing and connectivity and network effects come together, and then we stop just teaching computers to do what we tell them to do and start teaching them how to think for themselves, well, machine learning just unlocked everything. You know what, the 2020s, I wish I could live through them again. That was the most remarkable technology decade in human history. Still lives in our memories today. But let me really now be fair to what he was trying to say to you, because it isn't all doom and gloom for humans. Yes, a lot of the jobs and tasks that you know today are going to be replaced by computers through the 2020s. But by the middle of the 2030s, we had worked out that we actually needed, not just needed, we wanted a human touch. And so we overcorrected with automation and then had to bring humans back into the system. I mean, think about it. Would you like to have a doctor that gets their diagnosis right every single time, that gets their treatment perfectly every single time? Well, of course you would. That's the computer. But then would you like that doctor to have zero emotions about the information they give you? Surely you want somebody with a bit of empathy and emotion to tell you if it's seriously bad news. You don't just want a machine to give you a message about it. So we had to bring humans back into the medical system. You know, it's one thing to have one of those automated gym computers do a DNA analysis and a metaphysical analysis and come up with your perfect gym routine. It's another thing to have a human gym buddy who makes it fun and exciting and you actually enjoy doing the exercise that the machine tells you to do. Oh, and by the way, we still have human dentists. I mean, not even robots want to work in other people's mouths for a living. Does that make sense to you?
Actually, it does. You're still a pretty good presenter, old man. But tell me, why do you look so young? You're 100 years in the future.
Well, thank you very much. But, well, if I can let you into a little secret over here, genetic modification is the bomb. There's no doubt about it that our ability to edit DNA, reverse the aging process, one of the great inventions of the last century. And then, of course, you add to that the ability to actually print out body parts. Not everything on this body is original, let's just put it that way. And we've then got those genetic energy implant packs, you know, that allow us to make sure that all the bits and pieces are still working as they should do. You know what I mean? Don't do that. You're going to thank me later, promise. Just what I can tell you, I've already told you too much, but what I can say is you're never going to retire, but don't stop saving for those later years because, you know, looking this good doesn't come cheap. You're going to need some money.
Well, Certainly our fashion preferences are still the same.
Well, yes, sometimes class is permanent, can't be improved, not for anything. Hello? Are you there? I think our link is breaking up. Maybe we're running out of airtime here. Yeah.
Yep.
Final questions? Yeah?
Yeah, is the YMCA still going to be here?
Of course the YMCA still exists. In fact, next week I'm speaking at their 280th anniversary event. I've actually got to go and prepare for it now. In fact, maybe some of you in the audience will be with me at that 280th event. Anyway, got to go now. Really, you need to enjoy the 2020s. It's the most remarkable decade. It's amazing. Enjoy.
Just a little bit of fun, but to make the point that we've got to flip everything on its head. We are facing a decade or two where everything is going to change and everything is going to be up for grabs. So what? Very quickly as I close, an implication for the YMCA. 175 years ago, the world of work was in turmoil. Young people in particular didn't know where their place was in the world. They looked ahead at an uncertain future, at a world that was changing faster than it had ever changed before, and they were lost and needed help. Does that sound familiar? Right now, more, I think, than at any other time in the last 175 years, we need organizations like the YMCA to stand with the young people of the world and to say, it's going to be okay. We've got this. We can do this. The YMCA, I believe, is more relevant now than it's ever been. But so what for you? Very briefly, 5 things for you personally to take away as you think about what the next decade or two holds for you as a young person in this crazy, turbulent world. The first thing is, most of you in this room will see your 100th birthdays. Many of you will be at the 280th anniversary of the YMCA. Not in some Zimmer frame making your way in. You'll still be able to do the yoga sessions. The first person to live to 150 years old is already alive. Anybody who was born in the 1990s, who was born in the 1990s here, almost all of you are going to die in the next century. You are going to live in 3 centuries, the first human beings as a generation to do it. If you're here with one of your friends, you might be friends with that person for another 100 years. I hope you've chosen wisely. That's a long time. That's a long time. But that means you have to plan for a life of that length. That length of life needs planning and forethought. It can't just be allowed to happen. And you've got to think you've got longer than 70 or 80 years on this planet. You might have double that. What are you going to do with all those years? The second thing is we need to stop thinking about AI and start thinking about IA. AI, artificial intelligence, is too big a thought. It feels like you have to have a Google supercomputer in your basement. What the 2020s is going to be about is intelligent assistance. And it's already in the palm of your hand. Everything we do and everything we engage with needs to be in the palm of our hand and allow us to have intelligent assistance. That's going to apply to the work that the YMCA does. And it's great to see so much digital integration even at this conference. But you've got to integrate digital into your lives. And then finally, you've got entrepreneurship being absolutely essential. That doesn't mean you can't get a job, but it does mean there will be parts of your life when you don't have a job, and you need to be able to be an entrepreneur. This may be something that the YMCA can really, really help with. Fourthly, there's on-demand working. We're not going to work the way that we used to work. There's opportunities in the gig economy for everybody. And finally, I can't apologize on behalf of all old people, but I can say that we, unfortunately, are leaving a broken world for your generation to fix. We want you to take the lead. We want you to begin now to fix the planet. The 2020s is a remarkable decade of change with lots that's broken and difficult, but so much opportunity that lies ahead. What a wonderful time to be a young person in the history of the world. What a wonderful time to be connected to an organization that connects young people and has the 175-year momentum behind it to change the world, to change your lives, to change your life. Thank you. If you want some more information, if you want to know what a futurist does and have access to some of our research and resources, that's how to get hold of it there. Notice, please, it's YMCA capital letters, exactly as you see it. I'll be here for the whole day and through tomorrow, so chat to me if you can. Otherwise, join some of the workshops and panel discussions later today. As we think about, yes, 175 years gone, but 175 years to come. Thank you.